problem here. And I think that's what people here want to hear. What are you going to do for the gray people? Because there are no young people here worrying about schools right now. So can we speak to the issues that affect us older citizens? Thank you.
So just to clarify, your question is specifically that you're asking about transit and bicycling on sidewalks. Okay, so we're going to pass it to the mayor, and Tim and others may have something to add.
Yeah, and I hear you. The transportation plan actually has a big focus on how we make walking and cycling more safe. And part of that big challenge is you don't mix them. You can't have cyclists on the sidewalk. You can't have people walking in the streets. You know, generations ago, cars and pedestrians used to run into each other a lot more often, and we came up with the concept of sidewalks. And we have sidewalks all over the city to separate cars from people who are walking. Unfortunately, bikes never really got in the mix years and years ago in this city and many cities in North America. And they don't go as fast as cars, and they go a lot faster than people walking. So they need their own space. And that's part of why we've had a focus on bike lanes and making sure bikes have their own space where they don't mix up with the cars, they don't mix up with the pedestrians. And the problem is we're in that transition now. We're creating bike space around the city, trying to make it as safe as we can. And in the process, it's safer for pedestrians on the sidewalks and safer for people in cars as well. Although cars, you have quite a bit of buffer around you to protect you. So all of the traffic fatalities, almost all the fatalities and injuries we see are cyclists and pedestrians. So that's the key thing, is that separation. Right now there are still people riding their bikes way too much on sidewalks, and we got to deal with that. There's an enforcement side of that the BPD do, and our bylaw officers. There's a need for us to have the cycling lanes, the bike lanes, so that there's no excuse. There are places in the city where anyone on a bike is terrified to be on the road. If you look at some of our streets, like 12th Avenue or some of the downtown streets, it's scary to be on a bike. There's no space for the bikes, and that's often where you'll see cyclists riding on the sidewalk. That said, you see people downtown who are just reckless, and they're riding on sidewalks with no regard for people who are walking. And that's something that we have to end. That's more enforcement, more education, and better infrastructure for bikes, and making sure they're not on the sidewalks. On the transit side of things, so unfortunately there's been a huge bias towards how you get people into downtown on the bus system, and not so much, particularly around the downtown peninsula, how people move around the downtown peninsula on buses. The focus has been more get everyone in and get everyone out, and that's how the bus routes have all been designed. They really weren't designed with all the local residents in mind and how you get from A to B, the West End, downtown, Yaletown. And that's work that we need to do with TransLink right now. Those conversations are active to say we need to look at how we improve the bus routes around the downtown for all the residents. Because when a lot of these were designed, there weren't nearly as many people living here in the downtown, and we need to make improvements. So a case in point being the situation we have with that block of Robson by the Art Gallery and the rerouting that's taking place. It's a clear example of where you change something and actually the whole system doesn't work for some people, maybe it works better for others, but we have a complicated network through the downtown that needs revision and needs improvement. And as we look at how we have more public space for people to walk, for people to enjoy and recreate, the bus transit routes are obviously a big part of that as well. So there's a lot of work that we have to do in the months and years ahead to improve transit around the West End and downtown peninsula, and make sure that the new public spaces that we want to create through the downtown, as we add more people, we need to actually add more public space as well. That those things are in sync, and we can work through those together.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment about that? For years,
Wait for a microphone.
Yeah, let's wait for a microphone, because then I don't have to paraphrase on you. And then we're going to go to Bob, and then here's us.
I've lived in the West End since 1968, and I go to Seattle a lot. Why can't we have something like Seattle where we have free buses that could go, for instance, going all around Robson, Denman, Davie, and maybe Granville or Burrard or whatever, and it's just a continuous free ride in the downtown area. Seattle has had it as far back as the 1960s. And secondly, I go to Paris a lot, and I think it's the most beautiful city, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I spent months there because that's where my relatives are from. I can't wait to come back to Vancouver, except I have a problem because they do not have what we have, which is nature. Our beautiful peninsula is surrounded by beaches, by mountains, bays. It's out of this world. But my cousins who come from Paris are awed by that, except they find that we don't have sufficient garbage containers all around those streets, those main streets. In the summertime, they overflow and they smell. And Davie Street is grungy. Get rid of those pink garbage cans, update things there. It's grungy. The businesses do not take pride. They should be cleaning in front of their establishments. You know, and Robson, I'm sorry, but Robson doesn't do much for me because it's all selling clothes now. I remember a time when it was Robson Strauss and it had so much character.
Greg, did you want to make, Mayor Robson, do you want to make a couple responses and then we'll go to the question?
Very quickly, I think on the garbage can problem, we actually had, this summer there was more of those problems than ever, and actually it was where Twitter and we started to get, everyone with the smartphones now started taking pictures and sending them to me, and which was very helpful actually, because then I say right away, okay, get a crew, let's go, that needs to be fixed up. So we're able to deal with it much faster than historically, because we can use the technology. So there were more, as the problem worsened in the summer, we got more garbage cans out, and now with the switch that we're trying to do to zero waste, this is going to have to be a whole new approach so people can separate garbage. You probably see this in other cities where there's multiple bins on the street so people don't mix their garbage when they throw stuff away. So we're looking at that as well to manage and clean up the streets. And I take your point. This does come up of trying to make sure we have really clean, bright, welcoming streets and we take care of our sidewalks. I think it feels, I mean, Tim, what's come up around Denman and Davie in particular, there's obviously more investment and change that we need to make to bring the neighborhood back up to its fine, what it has been in the past. I think where it was a lot cleaner and more welcoming to people. There's work to do there for sure. Tim?
Tim's going to plunk in, and then I am going to move us over to Twitter, and Tim's going to speak to free buses.
We would love to have free buses. Unfortunately, we don't control the buses. That's a provincial government, and as much as we have tried, and I have tried here, the only success I did have as an MLA was Spencer down there, was to get the West Van buses to at least stop on their way up Georgia. Prior to that, they wouldn't stop at all. Well, it helps. Not all of them. I've often taken them.
It's really
but anyway,
challenging for the audience.
Yeah,
one of you has a
them.
microphone and one doesn't, so I'm going to get...
But at least they're doing that. But and you're right. I mean, we would love to have that. It's a matter of convincing the Premier of the province. And she, I'm sure, is going to say, well, other areas of the city want a free bus as well. So, but the one thing I do want to point out, I absolutely agree with this cyclist problem. I encounter it myself quite often. Almost got whacked about a week ago. Foolishly, the guy that almost whacked me was wearing a security outfit, and I could phone them up and say, this guy at this time just about hit me. But at any rate, but another problem there is, and I don't think that we in the West End own this one, pedestrians are terrible. They just walk across main streets, whether it's Denman, whether it's Davie, whether it's... And seriously, folks, I come down Nelson a lot from City Hall, and it can be a dark, rainy night, and people are wearing black clothes, you can't see them, going around those roundabouts, and then boom, all of a sudden they're there. And I think we have to educate ourselves on these streets that there are stoplights. You don't just wander out. You know, I know we're laissez-faire in the West End, but you're going to get killed being too laissez-faire.
Okay, spoken like a true car driver, Tim, but I know you guys are in the majority, so that's fine. Bob.
Okay, so we have a question from Ryan Suds. I'd like to hear more about what Vision Vancouver is doing to stop the Kinder Morgan pipeline.
Okay, I might get the other end. Aaron, I know you spoke to it a bit. Park Board's been pretty active on it, and then we'll finish up with the council piece.
Well, I wish I could take credit for writing the motion, but of course, Commissioner Sharma took this on. And the reason that it's of such interest to the Park Board is, can you imagine what that oil would do to our beloved Stanley Park and our beaches? You know, we love going down to English Bay and really cherishing what's there. And could you imagine what an oil spill would do that, and what the economic, what an economic disaster that would be as well. So the Park Board said, look, if you want to consider a pipeline going through Vancouver, you have to look not only at the environment, but also the economic implications of what would happen to our local economy. The fact is, the jobs are being created in Alberta, not in Vancouver, and so you know it just hasn't made a lot of sense to us from either an economic, social, or environmental perspective. Can I find 30 seconds?
Yeah.
And that is, Len, I wanted to answer a little bit about your question earlier. You said that your issue was for seniors, and I think that it's also one for youth. When we think about transportation, we think about income levels. Seniors and youth have a lot in common because we have similar income levels and we take the bus. I mean, when I take the bus, I see a lot of young people, I see a lot of seniors on the bus, and we share the space together. And I think that the West End is such a wonderful place because there are so many young people, there are so many seniors living together in harmony. And so I think that rather than saying, you know, these issues are for seniors or these issues are for youth, you have to think about that as being West End issues that we all deal with, and they're challenges that we all have in common. So.
A quick update on the Kinder Morgan pipeline issue. Right now, there's a National Energy Board hearing process that is going to take place starting in January. The National Energy Board decided that there would not be hearings in Vancouver, that they would be in Calgary on the first phase of the project proposal. So they also said that some community groups from Burnaby and First Nations could not come to those first hearings. They would not have status as interveners. So those hearings are being held in Calgary. They're very restricted for access. I think it speaks to a very, very unfortunate process that is not involving our community here in Vancouver. And we're looking at what we can do here in Vancouver to do what we can do about that to make sure our communities have voices in this process every step of the way. That's one piece. The second piece is City Council. We asked the city staff and legal department to look at a bylaw that would require anyone shipping oil through and adjacent to our city to have liability insurance for the worst case scenario. So if it's tens of billions of dollars of a massive oil spill here in Burrard Inlet that hits Stanley Park and impacts business in our community, they have to carry the can. It's not taxpayers, it's not local businesses that are going to pay for the mess. And it's a very, very expensive mess to clean up when you spill bitumen, as people are finding out in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So that coverage is not currently required. They're required to have about $1.2 billion of liability insurance, which if there's a big oil spill in Vancouver, I think we'd be way, way beyond that. So we're looking at requiring that liability insurance as a bylaw, and other communities may choose to bring that bylaw forward as well. And I think that could change the game in terms of local communities saying you can't just force this stuff through and not take responsibility for it if there's a problem. And that's what we're doing now.
Roberta's going to go to someone just before you do those. Let you all know that while there is no public process process that you have access to yet. We're working on that. Kinder Morgan, the company that's proposing the pipeline, is having open houses in Vancouver next week. The date of the meeting closest to you is November 15th at Harbour Centre from 5 to 8. So if you Google Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Pipeline, you'll get their new Talk Pipelines with Us. I was just looking at it. Talk something with us. Talk tankers. I don't know. I'll figure that out. I'll let you know.
November 15th at Harbour Centre for more information.
Hello, my name is Alexandra, and don't live in the West End, but I am a volunteer with Vancouver Public Space Network, along with these two other lovely gentlemen, and we are obviously very supportive of the city's work to make Robson Square a pedestrian-friendly zone, but we know there is a number of concerns, and we are just wondering how you are trying to better that, especially with the number 5 bus, and how you plan to be rerouting that area, and also how you plan to further push for Robson Square as a pedestrian-friendly zone, because it is going to a council pretty soon, and so we're just wondering what the next steps will be.
Gregory,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
you.
Thanks for the question. And as I was mentioning earlier, the importance of more public space throughout our downtown is really important to us. It's something that we committed to in our election platform, was creating more public space downtown. And the challenge that I think many people in this room are aware of is the number 5 bus with the access through that block of Robson Street, particularly in the winter, in the daytime when people are shopping, going back and forth to work, and there isn't the festive activity that we have enjoyed in that block, and when we've closed Granville, when we have Davy Days, when we have car-free days, the streets are full and lively, but it's not always like that. So what we do in that block right now, we're in a process to figure out next steps. The decision had to be made back in August with TransLink to say keep it closed or open it up. At that point, it looked like we're on our way, as we were for a couple of years through the Olympic years, that we had it closed for a number of years there, and everybody adjusted to that, and then we've been back and forth a couple times. So we said in August, well, we're worried about the north side of the art gallery, which is going to all be redone, and that process of fixing it and restoring the whole north side of the art gallery was imminent. The city leases that land from the provincial government, so we've been working with them at the next steps. And we were worried that if we opened up the south side of Robson Street there, that all of a sudden we'd have to shut down the north side for the renovation, and there'd be no public space around the art gallery for many months. So at that point in August, we said, you know what, we better keep it closed, and in case this process on the north side starts. That's now being delayed a bit. So the next opportunity to change the bus schedule with TransLink looks like January. So we're working with TransLink on different scenarios that we could do there, obviously getting input. So welcome feedback from all of you through the process that we have to look at that, creating that as a public space, or how we do that. We're also finalizing what's going to happen on the north side of the art gallery as well, because that's now going out to tender for people to say, here's how we will change and what we will do on the north side of the art gallery. So all of that public space right now is kind of up in the air for redesign. We need input on this. We really want all of your input on this, because we want to do a really good job of this. So the next public space that we might have available and create in the downtown, we have a rigorous process around how we do that, and working with Vancouver Public Space Network as well would be really helpful through all of this. It has. It's been closed for years and years.
You guys, I think the message is very strongly heard that there is definitely a loud voice around opening Robson Street now.
And the north side of the West End is comparatively different than the interstate. Our shuttle buses over there, but we don't have them there. You've got to move on the 1875 Rawson Street. I've never been to South
Tori, maybe we can just make the last, so we have one more question, so we'll hand you the mic and then we're...
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are you paying attention to the mic?
I'm sorry, it's very difficult when people are yelling, so let's give the floor to Pam, who's got the mic.
I just want to mention, with all respect, I live 1875 Rawson Street. Those buses coming from the North Shore does not accommodate people from that area to go. Years ago, we had Chilco Loop there that had 3 buses for our service. With the expansion of the Causeway and the Parkway, we lost that. We don't have adequate bus service on that area. English Bayside, wonderful. They've got their shuttle buses, they've got the number 6 bus, and they're able to move people right up the skyline, Canada Line. The question is, we need better bus service for our area. We have a lot of seniors over there that need that bus system, and we need to get through that area. And I say, if you want a people's square there, let it be a people's space square. But, you know, there's a sidewalk. What's wrong with having a bus parallel to that come through? Because people can't go beyond that sidewalk and come down. And another thing I have to, I'm not against temporary closing, Mr. Mayor. Those things are great. New Year's Eve celebration, jazz festival, fine. But permanent, I'm totally against that. I think we need that transit through there. And not only do we need it right to the end up to Hamilton Street, and maybe they can start turning on Translink going down to Hamilton to Pender, and they come around Granville Burrard and down the Denton Street. That would serve us much better, and I think it should be looked at. Sorry for the interruption. I apologize.
I did want to interject. Okay, you're welcome to yell and scream. The challenge is that people don't get heard that way. So I did want to very strongly emphasize that we're all here as Vision Vancouver representatives. We hear you, and we will take that in strongly into account. Okay, so I'm just going to finish my sentence here because this is a very critical point for all of you. There is a city process. It's very important that you input into that so that all of the councillors who will be voting on this towards the end of November. Carol, I know you're going to be at council and we'll hear you there. Really strongly encourage you all to fill out the survey. If it's a big issue for you, whether or not it's a big issue, I'd love you to fill it out.
Focus for vision, please.
Okay, sorry.
Questions does not allow us to tell that we don't want the options of closing that off.
Okay, well that's good. So
that survey should have at the last question, it should have a none of the above or allow for a comment. Otherwise, it doesn't even get sent.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Definitely take that back.
Take that back and stop.
In the interim to that, you're welcome to email me. I'm happy. You can mail mayorandcouncil@vancouver.ca. Okay, good. Okay, we're going to do, Tori, sorry, we've done you. So Roberta, you get one more. I'm sorry, there's no way we're going to get all these hands in. So I think what I'm going to do is get us done at 9, but we'll all be here until 9:30 to talk informally with you and the Roberta. Yeah. Sorry, I've got one of, we will definitely be available for questions afterwards. The mic at the back.
Yes. My name is Mitchell Kahn. I live right around the corner. I'm very concerned with smoking in public spaces. There are bylaws that are roundly never attended to. Could you speak to that?
I'm going to get our park board commissioners to start, and then I will ask him to talk about it from the city perspective and Sherry. Okay.
Yeah, with respect to parks and beaches, we did bring in a smoking bylaw, a ban bylaw. It was 2010. And our approach really was, for the first quite a while, was one of education, recognizing that there are a lot of people who come into our neighborhood who aren't West Enders, right? So whether they're coming from the suburbs or coming from out of country, people who don't know that we have a smoking ban. And so really, we didn't want to be punitive, to attack these people, an excuse to give them a fine. Our park rangers do make an effort to go up and talk to people. I would say that 90% of the time, folks are, oh, sorry, I didn't know we had a smoking ban, so sorry, and put the cigarette out. we are looking at trying to increase the presence of our park rangers, and also in the summertime, the police officers who do walk the beat along English Bay also do write tickets as well, so they do talk to people. So it actually is the only bylaw that our park rangers have the ability to write a ticket for. But admittedly, our approach is one of more of a gentle approach, talking to people, trying to get them to just put them out.
I've never seen anyone get written a ticket for that, and I've seen thousands of smokers. And signage could be greatly improved.
Yeah, if I could, and fair point. And this is, it's funny because we get a lot of people who complain that we have too much signage. So it's trying to find that balance. You have the no off-leash sign, the no smoking sign, and then we do get a lot of concerns from residents that you don't want to, have too much of that in our public spaces. But it's a point well taken. And I think for us, we look at it really as a bit of a culture shift. And once upon a time, people didn't wear seatbelts, right? And they had to really crack down and enforce that. I don't think there's anyone now who drives a car who just knows it's common sense. You don't to drive without buckling up. And I think really we are starting to see that same attitude shift among smokers. But our challenge is, by and large, folks who aren't in the neighborhood. We do have our park rangers ask these folks, where are you from, are you visiting? And by and large, they're not from the downtown core, they're not from Vancouver. So it's trying to find that balance, but as I said, we are looking at trying to step up our park ranger presence, especially during the summer months, in all of our parks and beach areas.
Tim, do you want to talk about it from a council perspective?
Sure. Actually, I've been on the Metro Park Committee for a number of years, and we had a huge fight around smoking in parks, and as to whether we should ban it in parks, and what do you do, and how would you enforce it, all the usual questions that kind of come to mind. And finally it passed, but people were very averse to bringing in any enforcement, so we brought in signs, and of course we had our park rangers, fingered whenever they would go up to people or yelled at or sworn at. But they are starting to encourage them to give fines, and the police are able to do it in Vancouver as well. It's tough to catch people, not very often. I mean, I don't see as many smokers as I used to. You've got to have that cop there at the right. It's like catching a motorcyclist roaring through West End, which is another problem that drives me crazy. But it's tough to have a police there right at the time the guy is smoking. But obviously, I think education is the key. I understand in the parks now it is going down a great deal because people are becoming aware, and peer pressure. Just you and me saying to somebody who's walking on, do you know that you can't smoke here? Now you might get a bad reaction or you might not, and it takes a bit of gumption to do that because we're not enforcing it. But I think we have to play our part and just let people know this is an area that can. And sometimes people respond badly and sometimes not. But it's going to take a while. It is a cultural shift. It's not that long ago that almost everybody was smoking on the streets or in restaurants or what have you.
Smoking on the sidewalks, the whole 6 meters in front of open doors. Legally you shouldn't be able to walk on the sidewalk and smoke anywhere in the city, but yet if you're walking behind someone who smokes, you're washed over their smoke.
Gregor, we're at a meeting, I don't have to call her. So Gregor's going to add a point around that.
Yeah, I think we are, as Aaron and Tim have said, we're in transition with this. We're actually light years ahead of most cities around the world, and we get a lot of requests as a city for how we've made this transition to make secondhand smoke less of a problem and an issue in our city. We're not all the way there yet, and we recognize that. And the enforcement side of it is really what remains. It's ramping up the education, and at a certain point, it's like, okay, everyone should know this by now, and now you are going to get a ticket if you're not playing by the rules. And with everything that we do, there's, whether it's enforcing jaywalking rules, if it's smoking in public places, enforcing those rules, there's a fine balance. It's not, I think the bylaw enforcement officers and the police are mindful of people giving them a second chance at times. I think all of us don't like it when you get nailed and you get a ticket for something. That said, if you've been breaking the rules, there is a consequence to that. So I think as we've ratcheted up the anti-smoking and secondhand smoke laws here in Vancouver, I think the next steps are around enforcement for that. More just broadly, there's a lot of points that have come up that are really helpful for city to hear about through 311. So we have a whole bunch of people working at the city that answer phones, and 311 is the number to call if you see anything amiss in our city, if you have concerns, any of that stuff. The city has people that are taking care of that. You can email us at mayor&council@vancouver.ca, but 311 is a really good resource. It's increasingly popular, all different languages. You can phone 311 and report a concern that you have, and things like if the survey is wacky, it doesn't ask the right questions, and particularly doesn't ask the pointed question about what we need to do here, and if it's none of the above. That's phoning 311, emailing. It doesn't sound like we caught that through our email, but that's where we can make the change and be responsive. So that's a really useful tool, and as well with social media as well. We're working on an app for smartphones to report problems as well. So some people don't want to pick up the phone and call and get into a conversation about it. They just want to tap out a quick message. And the city app is going to be, it's in the works now. People will be able to report, take a picture of something that's wrong, press a button, and boom, in it goes. So that's the new technology that we're embracing for letting us know what we need to fix.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm sorry, you can wave hard, but we have to be out of the church by 9:30, and I think given the number of questions left, it's easier to adjourn the formal part and allow one-on-one conversations to get answers to your questions. So I'm going to say a few things and then turn it over to Mayor Gregor for closing tonight. Transmountain.com/talk is the website that I was referring to earlier. Sorry, I mentioned a number of documents tonight that we could get for you if you want them. You can leave your name. There's tables at the back with forms. We were trending tonight as #1 on Twitter in Vancouver, so many thanks to Bob for tweeting up the form. Thank you. We are going to be here for a few more minutes. We're not quite over. Gregor's going to close this up. But also because if you tweeted things, we can also answer on Twitter.